Disclaimer. The information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GANs processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
And let's welcome Alex, who's continued to be here from the beginning. I don't think you've missed one program yet, Alex, so thank you all. And again, I'm proud to share this platform with all the knowledge seekers and Alex from Canada as well, as he's shown us how he's extended his fields across Brazil, across Mexico, and many other teachings around this planet. So we're very fortunate to have him with us, and let's just thank him on the silent level, but elevate his soul as well at the same time. So thank you, Alex, for joining us, and let's see what you'd like to bring or how you'd like to proceed. I know we just had a pretty big event earlier today, about a 4-hour session. Maybe you have that included. So welcome.
And thank you very much, Mark. Excellent introduction to the meeting today. This is the North American meeting, and as such, it's represented by Canada, US, and Mexico. But what makes this so special is the representation that we get from all around the world. And this will be growing because we're looking at the banner of the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute and the teachings of Professor Aaron Tevakoli Keshe. And so we are going into uncharted waters, as we say, but actually uncharted space. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute, Teachings on Plasma Science. We're at the intermediate inner space level, and today's topic is Dreamscape. My name is Alexander. I am from Canada. It is February the 19th, 2023, and this is the Keshe Foundation North America Plasma Education Series. So we have tried to condense over 6,000 hours of teaching that we've done on many private platforms and try and contribute to the public platforms. And so we've gotten to this inner space level. And in that inner space level, we are now completing the intermediate inner space level. It's hard to believe that we're racing through this series like this. And so there's a progression. We started in 2 years ago with the teaching, understanding, knowing, insight, earth space. And now we're looking at the inner space because we're on the road to outer space. And that's what we are. We are a space institute. And so we're trying to find where this outer space really is, because we have this little position, and I mean it's a tiny, perfect little position in this kind of corner of the universe, that little tiny red dot in the sky there. And that's our little sentimental pie in the sky. The problem with it is, of course, is there's a much bigger pie. And, how do we get to that pi? And so with the assistance of the three books, starting with the Universal Order of Creation of Matters, which brings together three energy states. And then we have the Origin of the Universe, which creates the Twinity. And then in between, book number 2 is the Structure of the Light, which kind of links the two. And then you wonder, which way are you going? Are you going from the creation of matter, or are you going from the origin of the universe? And we're trying to answer questions, not ask more questions, because the thing that we really don't know is we don't know how we got here. Because getting here, there had to be a precedence, and that precedence was the planet got here. Well, how did the planet get here? And so we find that the planets have organized themselves very, very well. And they are location specific. And so obviously we want to tune in to the right planet, don't we? And so all of us here have tuned into that Earth place, right? That Earth place that's between Venus and Mars. So we were also location specific. And furthermore, on that planet, we all came to a certain location, and we didn't all pile on top of each other as is shown in this diagram. But one of the things that we need to understand here, that the position of the planets only represents one point at one moment, at one specific moment in time, and does not include the rest of the field, which is to say that all of these planets are likewise that tiny little perfect spot in the sky, that little pie in the sky. The field that goes around the sun is a massive field. It's a massive pie. So what we're looking at is really minuscule. And the reason we've had this problem is because we've tried to figure out the relationship between time, distance, and speed. And so, on Earth, we'll measure in kilometers or in miles, but in space, we measure it in terms of light years. Well, if these are light years, then it begs the question, how do we get here? And where do we dream? And how do we dream? Because we only seem to dream at night and for only a part of the day. And so that does not jive with the notion of light years. So we kind of fail in our terms of reference when we're looking at different distances, because we know that in outer space we can travel instantaneously. So there's this anomaly, and of course the problem with this anomaly is because it's shown how we've limited ourselves, and that is the limitation of nuclear science. And how did this limitation come into play? And so we find that the ethos of the universe has not been taken into account. And when we fail to do that, then we're limited by the speed of light. And the speed of light is in physicality. So this entire series of going from Earth space and inner space is to differentiate between the physical reality and the plasma reality, and for us to understand. So we don't need to understand the details, but we do need to understand that there is a relationship. And we need to understand that that relationship includes the universal community, because the universal community abides by the ethos of the universe, which includes morality, compassion, and courage. And this is all part of not only the creation of man space, but it's also the creation of Earth space. And so part of the man space and the Earth space, of course, is this inner space. And that's what we're talking about today. So the proof of concept is what everybody's looking for. And so the thing is that we have made this choice, you see, and that choice was a preference and sentimentality for Earth. And the thing is, we have this proof of choice because, first of all, we were proven to choose to be born. And so the question becomes, when exactly did we do this choosing? Because you can't choose after the fact, right? You know, did you want to be born? Yes. Boom. Okay, then you're born. And how did you want to be born? Well, gee whiz, I don't know. Should we use rocket technology? Well, Mom thanks you because you were born by choosing the outer space system. And yes, we were born into an inner space by default. And so there are two revelations that we want to bring up today, which in my opinion are shocking because they're shocking to me, because they're answering questions that I've had for a long, long time. And unless you're involved with that research in that particular subject, which I'm not, then, you just kind of believe that people who should know do know, and that they actually tell you the truth. And so we find that, maybe one of the reasons we've come to Earth space is to find the truth. Because let's face it, we're getting lied to every day. And so that's one of the things about dreaming. And when we go to sleep at night, and that's what we do, we dream every day. And so we make this connection to our inner space. And it resembles the flight simulation, you see. The flight simulation that we've encountered in the post-June 2022 era, which we are in that era now, because we want to go back to nature. Well, why do we want to go back to nature? Well, that's a good question. And again, we're asking so many questions. Why do we want to go to sleep? And who's the benefit? And then why do we dream? And so many other questions. So let's see if we can answer some of these questions, because here's one thing that we do know. That we look at the Earth setup and we see that the soul of the Earth body is in the biosphere range. It's part of the magnetical peace dome. And then the soul of the Earth is in the core. And so we are occupying this biosphere range. And so that's how we operate. And so this is the point of view that's most important, isn't it? Our point of view as opposed to the Earth's point of view. But, we try and figure out, we don't rotate when we walk, and then the Earth moves by rotating. But the key point here is that we have gravitational stability. And that's the resolution to this anomaly on how do we function as compared to the way the Earth functions. And so we find that there's a magnetical gravitational relationship, and then there's a stability point. So this is the principle of manifestation. So let's define manifestation. It's when two fields come together to form another. The formation of any field is a manifestation. And so there has to be a plasma feeding that leads to this manifestation. So if this plasma feeding is coming from somewhere, it would be coming from a field. That would be the launch field. And if it's going somewhere, well, that would be the target field. But the thing about this manifestation, it could be non-tangible or tangible, and non-visible or visible. And so, in fact, as we're trying to emphasize, it could be a plasmatic reality or a physical reality. except it always is a plasmatic reality. So how could this reality manifestation be this touchy-feely type of form artifact? Well, when we're doing things in physical, then we like to touch it and we like to feel it. But if we're doing things emotionally, maybe I could take a few minutes and insult you or abuse you verbally, and you might get a little touchy and you might feel a little resentment. And so whatever that is a form artifact of the emotion of presence. And so the emotion of presence is also an energy in motion at that manifestation point. So we have a physical and an emotional presence. And that is the manifestation point. We have to decide, how do we get there and what points of reference do we have? So what we found in terms of plasmatic symbiosis, where we say, well, 1 and 1 is greater than 2, well, we found that some of these ones are different forms of rays. And so we have PM-TIC rays, we have X-rays, we have gamma rays, and other rays. And the purpose of this is to figure out our terms of reference. And so we can reference things between ourselves. Is it possible to reference yourself between yourself? Or we can reference ourselves between what other people view. And we can adopt that point of view. So we can either do things the natural way, or we can look at and decide, are we garbage or are we profit? And, which way are we going through this gateway? And so when we look in that matter, we see that that becomes a matter plasma dimension that we call physicality. And that physicality is actually a feedback of the plasmatic feeding in the matter gen state. And so where is that feeding coming from? And how is it manifesting itself in the physicality? So are we just dreaming this, or is this a genetic feeding? And then what happens to that feeding? Does it change? Can it be modified? And so the answer, of course, is yes. And the answer then becomes another question. Well, which dominant matter state are you? And are you the defect? Or are you defective? So when we're dealing in those terms, we're looking at a specific kind of manifestation. And that is to go from this transparency point to this manifestation point that becomes apparent. That apparent is materialization. And so it's possible to be physically materialized, and it's possible to be physically dematerialized. And if that's the case, then the same is true for manifestation. And so this is all part of our searching for outer space. And although these questions may seem like overreaching questions, remember, you were born and you made a decision to be born before you were born. And where were you? Right? You remember? So right now we're in this race to the moon because we're trying to get into outer space. And the problem with the race to the moon is we have many more moons that have come up. And we see that Jupiter has a bunch of them and Saturn has a bunch. Some of the other planets don't have as many, and we only have one, which is pretty good because Venus and Mercury have none. So, we're not the worst, but you can see that there are certain kinds of trends So one trend is that Jupiter is very large and Earth is much smaller. And so the number of moons reflects that. But then there's a positioning with respect to the sun. And so there's a sequence, but that doesn't necessarily follow either, because we find that Uranus and Neptune have less moons, but they're farther away than Jupiter and Saturn. And so that sequence is out of sequence. So there's some kind of choice that has to be made here that is the determining factor. And so these are the things that we have to learn. And, we want to conquer outer space, but we have no proof of outer space because all we can see is the sun space, the planet spaces, the moon space, and that space in between, and all of it that we can see. And we can see this at the speed of light. And we know that because that's how we measure the distance. And so how are we going to conquer outer space if we don't know how to measure the distance? Well, we're going to find out next month as we do our flight tests to the moon. And so we're only about a month away. And so for a lot of people, this is going to be an outstanding revelation. It's not the one that I'm talking about today, but for them, well, plasma is something very strange. And when we're talking about the number of people involved, yeah, we're talking about over 90% of the population doesn't even know what we're doing. And so we have to be the teachers. We have to be quick teachers. Tell them plasma is a kind of energy state, and there are many different kinds of energy states. And so this is what's leading us to alter our point of view. And so we have to understand the Earth space point of view, but we also have to find our inner space point of view. And with our inner space, we see that there are sequences to follow. And if we do this correctly, then we get the key to the gateway to outer space. And this is pretty important because it involves the life and death scenario. So life, you were born, and death, well, we're all going to die. And so this becomes important, don't you think? And if it's not important, well, you know what, nothing's important. So let's assume that it's important. And so what we found in this particular series is this emotion of position, because the emotion of position involves the emotion of physicality with respect to something. And so that emotion of position is reference to the emotion of presence. It's the emotion of presence which manifests into the emotion of physicality. But where did that come from? And so that came from the emotion of man. We have to remember that. And we have to remember that as well. So let's review the plasma rules before we get to those two key points, because these energy states increase or decrease by at least an order of magnitude. And the higher energy feeds the lower energy. Well, if the higher one feeds the lower energy, okay, so that would allow us to decrease. But how do we increase? And so we have to understand that energy state changes can manifest through what we call natural creation or natural decay. We just seem to be preoccupied with the decay side. And then there's this other transfer state, which is catalytic or non-consuming. And for us, we have a classic example. It's called the sun. And we're living in that sun space. Yes, I know we're on Earth space, but the Earth space is part of the sun space. And so we have to see how we can transfer energy. But what we also find out is that we can transfer energy at a higher rate in the plasma states. And the higher the plasma state, the higher the transfer rate. And all of this is also done by many orders of magnitude. So, and in one case, you could say, well, it's a double jeopardy, right? If you drop down in energy state, the transfer rate also drops down. That would be a double jeopardy. But guess what? if we go into a higher state, the energy transfer is higher, double benefit. And so this is all done through the tricks, which we have to learn. The plasma absorbs fields, and plasma is a barrier fields. In fact, plasma does both at the same time. And the way it does that is follows the rules of the ethos of the universe. And the ethos of the universe is very simple. Life wants to live. And so we can't stop life and we can't stop energy, but we can hold it in the field. And so to facilitate holding this field, we rotate this field. And the faster we rotate and the bigger the field, the stronger the field strength. And so this is one of the ways that we can change energy states. And so we see that when we analyze all the moons that we are trying to race to, they all rotate in different ways. Some rotate the way the planet rotates, and some rotate opposite to the way it does. And then some just wobble like our moon, and it's a lonely wobbler. But the relation to the planet is what affects the rotation direction. Well, do we understand that relationship? So unless we study it, we really can't make too many comments about that. But then we find that the rocket scientists can't do that either. So no biggie there. So what we see is that we have to accommodate the strength of the fields by these field relations. And so we find that Earth space is a kind of energy state. But what's interesting is that we can transcend multiple energy states. So we don't have to go state by state. We can jump states, just like we can go step by step or jump a few steps. And the thing is that we find that the Earth space is a very gravitationally stable energy state. And that's a good thing, okay? Because, well, so is the sun, in fact, because the sun comes up every day and shines on this Earth. And that's why we're able to come here every day. And so all this done is according to the ethos of the universe. So the point of the matter is that when we're trying to mathematically understand these various dimensions, we find that really when we have 1 and 1 is more than 2, this is where the math breaks down. And we find the reason it breaks down is because it's based, or we could say it's mired in physicality. And so the 1 and 1 are the 2 feeding dimensions, but what we found out was that not all ones are the same one. So we have the 2 feeding dimensions, and they create a feedback dimension being the 3rd dimension. And so that being the point, that the 3 dimensions that deal with the volume of the field, which includes the spherical relationship of that field, not just a circular relationship, we find that of these 3 fields and how they relate to the other, we're none of these 3 fields because we're observing them. So that means we're in another dimension entirely. Where are we? So when we look at the GANs in the bottle and how we've all been able to produce that, and so we can see these different energy states. So there's the proof of concept. We have a solid glass, but we can see right through it. It's transparent. And then we have the GANs, and the GANs has different characteristics. But one of the things that's most important is that it creates a rotating field. And then inside that rotating field, well, there's another hole. And it too is transparent. It's not like it's gone or disappeared. It's just transparent. So what causes that hole? And so that's the rotating feedback that we get. And so we find that is a feeding byproduct. Oh, so that's a process. And there's another process. So it becomes a process of a process. And is that double talk? Well, that's the reality dimension, you see, because outer space is not a place. Outer space is a method of energy transfer, because energy is always in motion. So we have to understand how the creation of the universe happened, because the creation of us happened the same way. And so we see in the cover of book number 1, the 3 matters coming together, but these 3 matters are all at a different energy state. And so when they come together, they create a field, and then that field is energy in motion. But from that field, it has to have a relationship. And if it has a relationship, then it has to have a charge. So the thing is, do we have to have that relationship at the same energy state? Or can we transcend the different energy states? And so, of course, we can. And that's the big deal. So if we do this transfer of energy on the same energy state, then we have this magnetical gravitational relationship with respect to the field. But if we transcend different energy states, then we have a magnetical gravitational relationship across these fields, involving many fields. And so if the energy is being transferred from one to the other, then there's an emission from one field and an absorption in the other field, and vice versa. And so this becomes the magnetical gravitational ways that charges move. And so that gives us a direction and the strength. Well, so basically, there's a problem when 2 forces come together, because we lack an understanding. We don't understand the universal harvesting, which is self-enhancement. And what that involves is the relation of some source. We haven't specified which source, but that relationship clearly is to the individual you. That's you. And so you've chosen your planet. And remember, you have to choose before you go there, right? You can't go there and say, oh, yeah, well, I'm just going to choose this one because I'm here already. Well, that's not choosing. So you choose your planet before you go to that planet. And so you create these field forces coming together to create this field. And you have these 3 dimensions. And then you have other people who are deciding, well, we're going to loosh harvest your energy, which becomes a relationship of some individual to the individual you. And this actually creates a self-consumption. And so that becomes a real problem for the loosh harvester, because they have a relationship of some other individual to the individual them. You see, it's a 2-way street. There's a relationship with you, and there's a relationship with themselves. Well, how can you have a relationship with yourself? Well, it creates a binding. And so we find that the method of binding energy on this planet boils down to lies and cheating and stealing and double cross deception. And we find that this is the binding of energy at the expense of others. And this is going to be obsolete, because when we try and figure out where we get this energy from, we tend to look for this multiple choice question. Is it a flash? Is it a glow? Is it a glitter? Is it profitable? Or are we losing? Is it a confidence in losing? How can you have a confidence in losing? You know, if we do this, we're going to lose this. And so, is that a lack of confidence in the creation? Or is that a lack of gravitational stability? And why is that the conclusion? Because we are deciding what we're accounting for and what we are discounting for. Because we're just happy with that blast, or we're happy with that bountifulness, that well, or is it a genetic defect? And how did that genetic defect come about? And so this becomes the discussion, we're discussing principal matter, because we have these PM ticks which are feeding, and they converge together with the principal matter, transition matter, and convergence matter, and they create this field. And we call this field a Magrav field because it's in balance. But how do you know that? You need to have a reference. And so if this field, and let's say this is man space, and our reference is Earth space, and now we have a reference which we call inertia. And inertia is a field interaction between the two fields. Okay, so there's energy coming in, that's the feeding, and the grounding in the Earth is our feedback. And everything else is in between. And so there's many sequences, many combinations, many different energy states. But when we get to the core component and we look very closely to decide, is it plasmatic or is it physical? So when we look at the electron, we find that it is actually a PM tick in motion, which is magnetical. And the electron is made according to the picture on the cover of book number 1, which is the convergence of 3 matters of different energy states. But the electron is part of the atom, and the atom is a marriage with the proton. And so the atom becomes a combination ray, but it's bigger than the electron. Well, of course, because it now has a proton with it. So in relationship, the electron would be magnetical and the atom would be gravitational. So the goal is to have gravitational stability. And so we discuss these inert gases, and of course, that is impossible. Because if a gas were to be inert, then it would be non-existent. Non-existent doesn't mean non-visible. Non-visible means transparent. Well, hello, they're gases, so it's hard to see them. But unless you charge them up, and then they illuminate. And so we find that the inert gases aren't really inert. They are just transmutation sequence providers for elements, which we have on the periodic table. And then we have the combination of the elements, which are the physical molecules. And then we have other products, which are the chemical molecules. And of course, all of us have been producing GANs. These are the plasma molecules. And so you see that all things are in combination. And so there's the physical production, but then there's also the plasmatic. And these are created by the plasma gas molecules. And so we get to choose our natural creation or natural decay. And this is all in the fundamental principle of the twinity. So we see that the relationship with the electron and the proton is the transfer energy. And that transfer energy comes from the larger proton to the smaller electron. And then what? So we're just talking about the basic plasma feeding rule, where the higher strength feeds the weaker strength. But these rules are all based on the magnetical field forces of attraction and repulsion. The net result is the magnetical gravitational forces, which we call the feeding and the feedback forces. And so, are they physical? Are they plasmatic? That's always the question, isn't it? And so we're trying to figure this out. And so we find that if we are making choices, then we don't need to abdicate our choices after we were born, because when you say, well, it's just a child, not qualified. Well, really? Well, that child was born without a rocket. And if a rocket qualifies you to go into space, then a child has made a brilliant choice and is in fact the last child standing. So the last child standing or the last man standing has choices. And that is, we can turn on and turn off the feeding. We can either increase or decrease the strength of the feeding. And as a result, that changes our positioning. So it can enhance or diminish our positioning. And that's not a commentary, that's just a change in positioning. And so we look at the earth and how it works, and it has binding paths where energy is coming in, and so it's absorbing in and more is coming in. Well, this is a good thing, because in order for it to maintain itself, remember, the earth is not inert. The earth is a living entity, and so energy has to go out through emission, repulsion, the magnetical field forces being emitted. And so there's a balance, and this becomes this balance of maggrav feeding dimensions, where you have more energy coming in and more energy going out. But some energy passes right on through. And so that is possibly a defect. And I think we are at the point now in the post-June 2022 era where we can discuss this. After all, we are in the intermediate inner space teachings. And so when we look at the release of the PM ticks, it happens out from the decay process of the neutron decaying down to the atom process. And that becomes an electron proton process of marriage. But the neutron is extremely gravitationally stable. Well, so is the atom. Well, the PM tick gets released. And guess what? The PM tick is gravitationally stable also, because it is stable to be emitted and stable to be absorbed. And all of this done at light speed. And we didn't say which speed, because clearly it's going farther than the eye can see, and the only distance that the eye can see is measured in light years. And travel from the launch field to the landing field is done instantaneously. And we know that because we have these references on this planet. So when we bring things together, they will bond immediately. When we love someone, we love them immediately. When we talk to someone, we talk to them immediately. So there isn't that massive delay of light years. It would be hard to carry on a conversation if that was the reality dimension, but the reality dimension is there somewhere, and just because we can't see it, we can only see the physicality spectrum. But the physicality spectrum has a substructure, the plasmatic spectrum. And so we can exchange energy on the plasmatic spectrum. We can exchange energy on the physicality spectrum. And we can exchange energy across the reality dimension between the plasmatic spectrum and the physicality spectrum. And we can do that in both directions. And so we see the same thing apply with respect to our Earth. We have twin hemispheric rotations. The North Pole and the South Pole rotate in opposite directions. But that's done plasmatically. The Earth space itself only rotates in the one direction. So the hemisphere of the Northern Hemisphere and the hemisphere of the southern hemisphere are two rotating fields. And the relationship of the two is the rotating field of the Earth space. And we're on it. And so we see that when we're talking about energy and motion, we're also referencing twin suns. So when we look at the sun, it is structured the same way as the Earth is. And we say that this principal interaction is a two-way street. And this is now what we're looking at, these paths that are between the sun and the Earth. These are the streets of equality. But look, if you look at the size of the Earth and the size of the sun, there's no equality there. So where does the gravitational stability of each one come in? And so now we understand that we have to choose the equality reference point, right? Because the sun is gravitationally stable and the Earth is gravitationally stable. So the size of these two is not the reference point. The field strength is. And so when trying to figure out what are we made of, we see that we can use these X-rays. And they show the gravitational field effect, right? We're gravitationally stable. And so what we're looking at is the materialization effect, right? Materialization is the physical manifestation. And so in terms of these X-rays, it's actually a shadow effect. And sometimes we can see the visible disease effect, and it looks like a shadow. And the thing about these X-rays is they can't see the cells. They can just see the form that the cells make. And they can see these shadows. And so they know that that shadow is derived from something, right? It has to have a relationship to something. So we have over 4,000 different types of cancer. So this communication between what is unseen and what is seen is very stable. And so this intercellular gravitational stability is also stable. But the cancer is a disruption of this stability. And so as such, it's a disruption in the communication, isn't it? Well, this communication is very important when it comes to our positioning, right? So we can enhance or diminish our positioning. So our soul needs to be positioned. And so the soul has positioned itself within our brain, and that's a good thing. It's good to have your soul within you. But when we were born, we had to figure out, we were born in the womb of our mother, and our mother is on earth. But our positioning, was it in the brain or was it in the body? And it's a good thing it wasn't on the earth. That would be kind of messy. So we find this stability, this gravitational stability of the soul in the middle of the brain. And there's a position there. And we can walk around, we can tumble, we can play contact football or roughhousing hockey. We can move around all sorts of ways. And so we find that whether we move left or right or head over heels, these are the magnetical reference point to that center point, which is gravitationally stable. But we're talking about dream state and dreamscapes. And so somehow we have to go from this inside to this outside and cross this super supergranular layer. And the reference to a supergranular layer, as we made in the past, is just like the anatomic coating on the copper wires. But if we allow the soul to leave, we have to make sure that it's anchored, right? Because if it leaves, how's it going to know when to come back and where to come back? And so we have this GPS of the plasma of the soul, and it's controlled by the bandwidth of the field strength of the soul. But we say the soul is anchored in the blood. And we know this is true because if you bleed to death, the soul leaves. And so the question then, more questions, here we go. Well, which soul are we talking about? Are we talking about the soul of the man or the soul of the body? And now we have the souls of the cells? Which one? So we found that the relationship of the sun to the earth is the same as the soul of the man to the soul of the body. Except that when we look at the physicality of the sun, it seems to be an awful lot bigger than the earth. So somehow the soul of the man and the soul of the body are opposite. The soul of the man lives in that tiny brain, and the soul of the body lives in that big body. But that big body is made up of all of these cells, and then there's a soul in the cells as well. So we see that somewhere we made a choice, and that was the choice of the emotion of presence. But that location is the emotion of position. And that's how we've determined. But we haven't determined which soul. Well, so let's go back to the beginning. You know that favorite question, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, the answer is neither, right? Because they're both feedback. So we've determined that the physical reality is a feedback reality. So the first came the principal matter, right? Because that's the plasma reality. That's the plasma matter. So we got to ask a new question. Which came first in the physical matter? Isn't that what we really want to know? And so here's the shocking revelation. Shocking to me. When we look at the X-ray in the first trimester, we can't tell if the embryo is a chicken or a man. But what we do see is that the heart materializes. And the heart materializes before the brain. So, I didn't know this. It was never my field of interest. And I didn't even see the significance of it. But this becomes extremely important, right? Because we see that the emotion of position affects our physicality. Because not only is our physicality in reference to this planet, but our lungs are positioned within our body. And of course, our heart is positioned within the body. And, the head is positioned on top of the body. That's a good thing, because sooner or later, we're going to get a brain. But you see, if the heart precedes the brain, and so what we're looking at is the embryo before you were born. In other words, not born. And how many of you remember before you were born? I would say that the majority of us cannot remember before we were born. You know what? We can't even remember after birth, right? Think of the first time that you can remember something. Can you remember? It wasn't when you were born. You know, imagine if you remembered was being born and what a traumatic experience that is, and it's capped off with a little slap on the butt that you get from the doctor. Probably be a reflex reaction. You'd slap them right back, wouldn't you? But, you know, you don't remember. It doesn't matter. And then sometimes, you know, we can't even remember what happened yesterday, right? We say, oh, that person is absent-minded. Or we get into an accident and we have a concussion. And maybe it's so severe, we go into a coma. I can't remember. Or we get old. We forget things. Oh, we call it Alzheimer's. But you know what? All of us, when we go to sleep at night, we have this problem remembering our dreams. And so that's a kind of amnesia. And so this is the second astounding thing. Couldn't explain why we can't remember. And the thing is, all of these are a commentary on brain function. Well, hello. If the heart was created before the brain, and the brain is where you keep your memory, the reason you can't remember is because if you don't have a brain, you don't have the capability of remembering. And the remembering that we're talking about is in the conscious state, the conscious physical state. But we already know that in the unconscious state, we're capable of making a choice. We chose to be born. We chose to be born with a system that didn't use a rocket, right? And we were born on Earth, and our target shooting was accurate. So what we're talking about is the difference between the physicality and our dream state. So then the question becomes, why do we need to sleep? And say, well, we need rest. Well, the physicality needs rest, but the soul doesn't need rest. Well, which soul? We're still stuck on that. Is the soul of the man, the soul of the body, the soul of the cells? Well, wait a second. If the soul can travel, then, you know, is that who leaves? What about the soul of the body? Does the soul of the body want to leave? Well, wait a second. Who's staying behind? Well, the physicality stays behind, right? When you put your physical body in a bed, you go to sleep, and then you go dream. You make some of these dream connections. So the physicality stays behind. Well, who's looking after business? Who's mining the fort? Is it the brain? Is it the cells? Well, I guess it would be good for the cells to do that, wouldn't it? Because the cells have a soul, so they can take care of business, can't they? You don't have to do anything, you just have to remain alive. So maybe it's not the brain. Well, who's mining the brain? Oh, I can't remember. Well, maybe that's where the problem is. So now we see the relationship between the heart and its emotion and the brain. And so people who are clairvoyant can see the souls as they leave their bodies when the body goes to sleep. And so these souls travel along what we call this peace dome. And this peace dome seems to be the soul of the body of the earth dome. So our souls are interacting with the soul of the earth. Isn't that interesting? But the thing is, the soul of the earth is at the core. So the soul of the earth body would be in the plasma dome. Which soul of the man's body would be at this level? Is it the soul of the body, or is it the soul of the man? Well, keep asking more questions. Well, if we're going to travel into space, then we're obviously going to go beyond. And who's going there? Well, for sure it's going to be the soul, isn't it? Because it's leaving the cell souls to take care of business. And where do you go? Well, I guess you can choose. Oh, you can choose? Well, don't you need a brain to choose? Don't you need a physicality to choose? Well, obviously not, because the heart created the physicality before the brain did in the physicality of the earth space. And why? Well, why is not the question. Why is the answer? You go every time you go to sleep. That's automatic. How is the question? And the key is that it's safe. You can go in your dream safely and you can come back. And you're not going to miss the target. But probably you can't remember. Well, we're coming into an era where you can remember. And that's going to be a difference. So then the question then comes, is it just the soul that goes into the dreamscape, or does the soul of the body also go into the dreamscape? And if the soul of the body goes, well, wait a second. The soul of the body is bigger than the soul, right? Because the soul of the body lives in the soul, and the soul of the man lives in that pea brain. Oh, what if the soul expands? And why is the soul going? So let's see what happens in physicality, right? You all want to have an in-person meeting. It's nice. Hey, let's all go to the coffee shop and we'll sit down and have a meeting. Well, that's not practical if, we're here in North America and others are in Europe or Asia. So maybe we'll make a phone meeting. We'll use cell phones or we'll use the Zoom. Well, wait a second. When you go to sleep, maybe we'll make a dream meeting. Why don't we make a dream meeting? Who are we going to meet with? Oh, well, we get to choose. And do we remember? And do we know why? Well, what's interesting is with the new cosmic compact units, we can now connect. We can connect on a planetary level, and we can connect on an interplanetary level. You see, because the universal pathway will never lead you astray. And so this is the new science. The science, how it transcends the dynamic plasma boundaries, where we have the feeding radiance that comes from within and the feedback radiance that comes from without. And then this is the manifestation, at least of the plasmatic manifestation, and possibly the physical manifestation. It doesn't matter. The inner space field is a manifestation and a shadow of the soul spectrum. And so when we look at what Herman Wheel is saying now, it throws a different light on the matter. So a definite portion of matter occupies a definite part of space at a definite moment in time. Okay, well, one portion of our matter is the soul, another portion is the soul of the body, and another portion, well, we have the soul of the cells, and another portion is the physicality. And so it can be in part of a space at a definite moment. Okay, so before I go to bed, the soul is in the body, but after I go to sleep and I begin to dream, the soul is leaving the body. And so we find that there's no such thing as one and the same energy, which constitutes a charge at two adjacent increments of time. You can't be in two places at the same time. The soul can't be here and be there. But the soul has the soul of the body to work with. And the soul of the body has the soul of the cells to work with. And the soul of the cells has the body to work with. And all of them work together. And so this is the embodiment of the principles of flow and connection. And isn't that funny? The stupid Atlanteans knew this before the smart Westerners of today. Because in their materials, in their drawings, in their clothing, in their teachings, they had organized presentations of the 64 triple base codons of the DNA and the RNA. Like, we can't even remember where we came from, you know, and we're discussing DNA and RNA. Yeah, because the RNA is the universal energy that brought us here. But except that the RNA is an inner space spectrum of ourselves. And we're all unique, almost 8 billion of us. And so this was part of the feeding radiance. And as it manifested itself on this planet, we had to share the Earth space energies. This is a key point. And so that becomes the DNA modification. It's the feedback radiance. And so the feedback radiance is coming from the two sources. One is the physical reality, or the inertia. In other words, the blending of the feeding and the feedback radiance is the inertia, which is a manifestation. And so that would be a plasma reality. And if it's a materialization, that would be a physical reality. And so what we find as we change our environment, what we call the potentiation of hydrogen, we find that our DNA changes as well. Well, if our DNA changes, then the communication changes, doesn't it? And so that's why we see the change from an unhealthy to a healthy situation. The healthy situation is very stable. But if we go overly alkaline, that's not good. But if we go overly acidic, well, that's not good either. So the healthy part is the gravitationally stable part. And that would be the pH of the healthy blood serum. Oh, then the blood is, well, the blood is connected to the heart, isn't it? So we're trying to conquer outer space. We have to understand this concept of gravitational stability. And so when we're looking at the relationship of the earth and the man, we find there's souls of the body, and there's a physical body. And so the question becomes, are you the lord of your castle? Well, if you are, then there's a master-slave relationship. Is there a master-slave relationship between you and you, the soul of you and the soul of your body, and your physical body? And so we find that this relationship is a magnetical gravitational relationship seeking a balance, and that balance is a maggrav. And so when we look at the scientific responsibility, we find that that's part of the relationship, and the spiritual responsibility is the other part of the relationship. And so we find that the plasma science, by adding to the knowledge, is the third dimension. And how can we transcend these various dimensions, and at what rate of change? And so that becomes the question when we're analyzing these relationships. So when we're looking at this emotional point of our emotional position, it is transcending the difference between the plasmatic reality and the physical reality. And so we say the physical reality is our gravitational stability, and the plasmatic reality allows us to dream, or the plasmatic reality allows us to create. And this is allowing us to go beyond the soul limitations as we understand it. Because the soul limitations, if they're based on the physical reality, then you become a legend in your own mind. But if we can transcend out of the physical reality, expand the soul beyond our man-made limitations, and then we can start transcending the reality dimensions. And we can be like, when we dream, we can be like PM ticks, energy feeding packs, and we can be very gravitationally stable. And so the direction of flow becomes a magnetical reference point. And the reference point to what? Well, we have to make some choices. And so the earth has made choices, and as such has created this periodic table of elements. Well, when did the earth make these choices? How did the earth do that? And so we're not going to go into these details here. But see, when we look at the cups of life and how we created from the physicality of Earth's choices, we actually were creating ganses, CO2 GANs, calcium GANs, zinc GANs, and copper GANs, and the amino acid GANs and the water GANs. And all of these ganses we created it because we wanted to. And if you ever find that you give the cup of life to someone, that they fail in creating these ganses, it's because they're missing something. And that's the heart. They're missing the emotion. The ganses and the water have an affinity of exchanging energy. And they do that through the fields of emotion. And since these cups of life are established in the physical realm, then we're looking from the physical point of view, aren't we? And so we have now created a plasmatic condition, magnetic and gravitational field forces, and a home for the soul. And the combination of the cup of soul, the cup of emotion, and the cup of physicality creates a magnetical gravitational field and a home for the soul. And the thing is that you created it. And where did you create this? So the result is the interaction with you, the cup of life, and a cup of earth. You're involved. You are part of the process. You make the choice. It's the 5 cups of life, plus you, plus your soul. And you give it life. This is the dynamic plasma relationship. From this inner space field, we can have transmission. And that field extends around us, just like the peace dome. But it can carry on farther out, just like the planets. So that's all part of the sun space field. So the sun space has a field in which the planets are part of, and then we are in the Earth space field, and yet we want to go into the dreamscape. And so we find that the sun, as a catalytic energy provider, is providing everywhere. It doesn't decide. Who decides? The receiver. And as such, the receiver becomes unique. And so this is where the modification comes in with the environment. And so what we've been accustomed to is trying to predict this environmental modification. But we see in some cases it becomes a violation of our space. And there has to be an emotional relationship. Well, between what? So it's between our space and some other space, right? So what our space is determined by is our inner space. So our inner space has to have a relationship with some other physical space, right? Because our space made a choice, and our choice was to come to this earth, which is a physical space. So it's some spaces inner space versus some spaces physical space, right? Because we're not the only ones out there, right? Because there's an inner space and an outer space. Because the outer space is the transmutation to some other space. Well, so this is all determined by emotional positioning. That's what's important. And so the dynamic plasma has feeding radiance and a feedback radiance, and this crosses the reality dimension. And so now we understand that the soul of the man, well, that's you. That's you. That's your interacting between the plasmagen state and the mattergen state. And the soul of the body, well, that's the surrogate you, right? You can't be in 2 places at the same time. So this is your body, and it's interacting between the plasmagen and the environment state. So can the soul of the body go with you into the dream state? The answer is yes. Because you have emotional stability, right? Because now you have a brain and you have a heart, and that is part of the physical body. But that is all controlled by the cells, and each cell has a soul. So we're taking care of business here, right? We're taking care because the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, and the right side of the body controls, right side of the brain controls the left side of the body, right? And this is kind of important because we see that there's another, because the home of the emotion between the male and the female is not inside the body. That's why we have mommies and daddies in the marriage body. And the link is not a physical link. The link is an emotional link. The interaction is a physical interaction. So the emotional interaction of one and the emotional interaction of the other, not the same one, a different one, but one and one, and we create offspring. Now we say the blood is thicker than water. Well, yeah, because of the emotional connection, right? And then we have the extended family, and the extended family will grow in many different ways. One is obviously through marriage, and another is through divorce or other relationships. So where we think there's a physical connection, it's not the defining factor. The emotional connection is the defining factor. That's what determines the relationship, and we get to choose. So the thing is, it may be part of your family, and that's what you see, but that's not the truth. The truth is what's inside and what's being emitted. You need to look at the emission field, and the universal community has this capability, and so we seem to discount that, right? We have to choose what we account for, what we discount for. So we account for what we know, and we discount for what we don't know, and so we do some genetic modification. But what happens if that genetic modification is reversible? So what does that mean exactly? Well, if the modification is in physicality and the higher strength feeds the lower strength, then the genetic code is intact. It's the DNA code that gets modified. And we see the same thing happen in our family connections, because we have this biological physical concern and we have this legal physical concern, but we also have this biological emotional connection. But sometimes we have surrogate parents, and then of course we have the egg and the sperm. But if through the marriage of the egg and the sperm creates the embryo, and the heart precedes the brain, which is the residence of the soul, when exactly does the soul choose to be born? Maybe it can change its mind. Oh, I don't like that. That was a good thought, but on second thought, it's not working. So, the thing is, we need to make a genetic connection. And so we find that the maternal RNA connection is also the universal connection. So we have to look at the modification coming from the paternal side, shall we say, the genetic donor. And so we make choices. We make family choices. And even after we have our physical manifestation, or our physical materialization, we find that, well, those families could break up as well, and we choose other families. And these families are not biological. You know, it could be a gang family. But if it could be that family, then it could be another family. Well, couldn't it be a global family? Well, whatever family that is, it could be an adopted family. And does it have to be a planetary adopted family? Could it be a universal family? And that would only make sense, right? Because we can't remember where we came from. So we didn't come from the planet, did we? We arrived on this planet. We were born here. And so these are part of the conflicts that we have. We're trying to figure out this tug of war between man-made law and universal law, between this physical and emotional positioning. And it breeds a racial prejudice, right? Oh, you know, you're black or you're white, or well, wait a second, you're from Earth or you're from Mars. What's the difference? It's still a prejudice, isn't it? Or how about an universal prejudice? You know, well, we're from the sun space and you're from, you know, the planet Zeus, wherever that is, right? Oh, and so this affects your emotional position, doesn't it? So the whole thing about this dreamscape elevation, which is what the soul is doing in the position of the dreaming, is making arrangement. And it can do this because the physical body has a gravitational stability, and the soul of the man has a magnetical stability. And when we say it's magnetical stability, that means it can move, it can travel. And so now we have different types of choices. We can travel with the soul of the man, we can travel with the soul of the body, we can travel with the soul of the cells. They're all souls. But there's a new game in town. The thing about it, there are things that we can't see. So from the dreamscape point of view, if we have these cell souls that are governed by the soul of the body, that are governed by the soul of the man, and if the earth has the soul of the earth and the soul of the earth body, then the universal community must have the same. And so when we talk about the dreamscape point of view, we have to ask ourselves, is it from the man space? Is it from the earth space? Is it from the universal community space? What is the source of your inspiration? Because we're giving and taking from somewhere. And who's the leader here? It looks like we're all followers. So who's the leader? And who does the leader follow? And so what we're finding is that when we work with the soul of the earth body via the peace stone, we find that we create this dynamic plasma interaction. And this is the point. We need to work with the soul of the earth body. All things in combination. What? We're missing something. This biosphere of peace. The vertical people's dreamscape. Hello. Right? They have the same dreams, don't they? They have the same soul of the vertical people, soul of the body of the vertical people, the soul of the cells of the vertical people. So we see that the universe is emotionally normal. And so the earth is seeking freedom and emancipation. And we have chosen so we can choose the existential adaptation to the harvest of the plasma emotional energy of the plasma universe. We have that capability. So we wonder why our pursuit of happiness is such a failure. Is because we have a failure of choice in terms of our emotion of position. We have never launched a rocket into outer space. And we've all preferred to come to the Earth space as opposed to, let's say, Mars space. And look at all the other space. And so we see that the basic map of the emotion of position has to do with the magnetical gravitational field forces of the feeding radiance and the feedback radiance across the reality dimension. And so there has to be a relationship. So when you're looking at the soul sequencing, we still haven't got it right. The soul of the sun plus the soul of the earth is what attracts the soul of the man. Right? So the soul of the earth has to be here first. So the soul of the solar system plus the soul of the sun is what attracts the soul of the earth. Right? The soul of the earth has to be here first. Then the soul of the sun plus the soul of the earth, that can attract the soul of the earth body. Oh, well, the earth has to be here first, right? So now that we have an earth body, now the soul of the man can attract the soul of the body. Well, there we go. Now we're cooking. Well, then the soul of the sun body plus the soul of the earth body will manifest in the physicality of the earth. So now that we have a physicality of the earth, now we have a place to go. So it's the soul of the earth plus the soul of the body that manifests the physicality of the body. And now we have a place for our soul to go. But wait a second. Didn't we say that the heart was here first? I don't remember. And now we want to go to Mars. We're only a few weeks away. So we have to understand that our man space here includes our souls, includes our emotions, and manifests into a physicality. And there's a sequence. And so it involves the souls, the soul of the man, the soul of the body, and the soul of the cells. And something's missing. Something's missing. So we all came to Earth. And Earth has the same sequence. And this is the key point. We all came to Earth. We all made the same choice. Because of the bountifulness of this earth. So now we understand that there's things to take into account and things to discount. And so if we are looking at whether we are spineless or gutless or heartless or mindless or brainless or spiritless or soulless or godless, that becomes our point of view. And so that could be the dream state of a jellyfish. And some people have different ambition. Some have ambition just to have ambition. And then there's others who dream of being a virus. Well, the good news is that a virus manifests into protein. And it's all part of the amino acids. And that's why they're called the cups of life, and we can produce that. We can give it the emotional strength that it needs for the soul to get into that core space. And so we find that the dreamscape of our inner space is the same. The earth space landscape is heaven. And the man space dreamscape is peace. We are inherently peaceful. And this is where the science meets the soul of man for peace. And we are now using our beyond dream ships to set up the transmutation dreamscape. We are in the post-December 16th era, and we can make choices how we can transmutate through space and have that bountiful space, but we have to do it in a graceful way. And so today is a very special day, and we have to figure out who is coming for dinner. And we'll talk about that. This is the Keshe Foundation's speech against teaching us on plasma science. We're calling all Earth Space patriots. Now, make that conscious choice that you've already made in the dreamscape. There's a World Peace Treaty, sign it. Sign it with your heart, sign it with your soul, sign it with a pen, but sign it with sincerity. All of these spaces have overlapping fields of life, choices, free from boundaries or abuse. Follow that emotion of position map. It's made by the universal community, and that's your travel guide. So we see that the gravitational transformation on our earthbound physical and emotional level comes from the connection of the transparency point and the manifestation point. So this transmutation becomes an adaptation and awareness of the inner space emotional construct, and connects equally to the universal broadcast of inner space of freedom. So the inner space dreamscape adapts with and chooses man's morality. So yeah, you have to choose wisely and dare to dream. The plasma science needs to continue to be delivered in exchange for peace on Earth. So welcome to the outer space age. And that's the end of today's lesson. And it's also the end of the intermediate inner space series. Thank you all. I hope you had an enjoyable trip.
Thank you, Alex. Does this mean we graduated in a way? Thank you for helping us to gain more confidence in this vast, vast body of knowledge. And
so the test, Mark, becomes
yes.
if you remember your dreams.
Sometimes. Sometimes I do, but even the universal citizens that are here, and apparently Mr. Keshe said they had one in the system, or at least one, he'd also forgotten where he came from, and or how to get back home. So if a third of the people on this planet are not from here, and again, they're just hiding in the physicality like Mr. Keshe is, I often think it's they also could be hiding in a physicality like a tree or a bush. There must be, you must have to leave something at the door before you enter if you can't remember where you've come from. And maybe that's part of this appearing in the matter state. Otherwise, you would really appear as a magician here, wouldn't you? If you carried all the capabilities you had and knowledge while you were a passenger of the universe, let's say.
Well, there is a condition, you see, and that is a condition if you're disconnected. That is a man-made condition, not a universal condition. So the new technology will, shall we say, correct that.
Yes, apparently there's going to be a lot of corrections or things moving into different positions. As he said, galaxies and stars and so many other things will move into a position where they can obviously understand moving between the matter state and the state of energy. So with our, thank you again, Alex, and with our newfound confidence, let's see if any of the participants would like to bring something forward about this, as long as it's within what Alex has just shared or within what happened earlier today or within the structure of the foundation. That leaves a lot open for discussion. Well, let's ask this question. Is anyone here for the first time? We always like to ask that during this intermission in a way. If you're here for the first time, please tell us your name and where you're from and how you possibly found the Keshe Foundation or this group. So we hear in, oh, go ahead. Did someone?
It was only me.
Okay. You're allowed to talk back to the teacher here. This is one of the things that we can do. In so many university settings or class, if you kind of question what the teacher says, you may not get that grade on your report or your test that you thought you would. You may fall out of disfavor, but not here. We can question things because nobody is wrong, but yet no one is 100% right also at the same time. And there's so many things. I mean, these last 3 sessions that we had, the 471, 2, and 3, again, they're all amazing. It's all connected to every other workshop. And I think as we move forward in the knowledge, we'll start to see some of these things more and more. I was thinking about the creation of the earth, or let's say, well, let's take the earth. Mr. Keshe says it started as a speck, and then over millions and billions of years, it built up fields. It must have, again, the plasmas need to give and they need to take. And this process takes billions and billions of years, apparently, whether it's a star or maybe not. But this is what I'm thinking. This is what he shared, I think, with us in the process of creation, or perhaps it's in the formation of the Universal Council video. I'm not sure where I've seen this. But apparently the soul of this planet is in pain, and it's not correct in the view of some of its citizens. Because it's short on energy, it has to take energy from what it's created. And I don't think this will be the performa of what we do when we go out in space. I know Mr. Keshe said this soul is suffering, the soul of this planet is suffering. So perhaps it wasn't a correct creation. I don't think, well, the ones that know, I know he says that what you create in the future will be seen as correct in the view of the created, so to speak. So that's why we need to correct this. But in the future, other things that are created, and again, I'm just sort of guessing or surmising at this, it'll be more of a perfect creation, let's say, where the planet doesn't take so much from its citizens, which leaves because the soul of this planet is short, it's leaving us short, which causes our wanting to take that extra energy from another entity. In a way, the same as the planet is taking from our structure, as I understand it. And again, this is just my view of things.
Mark, if I may open up, because people are reluctant to speak, or they're still mulling
Sure.
over the concepts.
Sure.
But many of us at the panel here today did travel, shall we say, into outer space this morning. And the subject matter was dinner, food, feeding. But we didn't say what kind of feeding. And we didn't say, you know, when I say we didn't say what kind of feeding, I'm talking, did we feed food? Did we feed an emotional encouragement? Did we feed energy supplementation? Did we feed knowledge? So, well, it's D, all of the above, you know, whatever the multiple choice is. The point being is that we all are being fed all the time. And our perspective and our point of view has been, up until this time, exclusively from the earthbound point of view. And so we now have a different point of view. And what we were examining in a small sentence, we were examining the new feeding system. And so that not only nourishes us, but it changes, shall we say, the mode of operation and the point of view. And this is what's key. So we are dealing in the past tense now. This is not something, you know, in the future. We are in the post-December 16th era, and we took another giant step. We are running out of steps here, because what we've done here is we have proven the concept. But what I have done today in this class is reiterated the concept of the obvious. So we understand that we are physical. We understand that, you know, we've made cars, but we all understand that we've made children, and we understand that we were born. So we don't exactly know what this new technology is doing, but we know that it exists. And so what's been made plain is that we have not gone that extra mile or light year, shall we say, to figure out how we were born. It doesn't seem to be important. It's like, oh, well, we're here. Well, how did you get it? Well, that doesn't matter. You know, well, we're here. And, but if you don't know how you got here, then you're not just here, you're stuck here. And if you're stuck here, well, maybe your neighbor is stuck with you being here also, because what we've done is we've cut off this advanced technology, but we've cut it off at the desired point. That is the desire to learn about this technology, or the desire to understand this technology. And so the key point being is that we came to Earth as children, and we are now adults. Well, why didn't we come as adults? Well, the thing is, of course, that mommy would be in a lot more pain than she was when we came as children. Okay, well, that's the obvious answer. Okay, so that's good. But the thing is, we want to travel into outer space. So the question then becomes are we going to travel and leave here as adults and arrive somewhere else as a child? Well, no, that's not what we're going to do. And so how are we going to do this? And so now we've identified the questions, we've identified the problem, and we've seen the conclusion. And the conclusion is that we were born in the physicality, and the heart materialized before the brain. Well, if the brain is the seat of the soul, and the soul is the governor, how come the governor wasn't here first? And this becomes a really, really important question. And so we find that each and every one of us is our own governor. And if that is the case, now we have demonstrated equality. And if that is the case, and we've demonstrated a feeding system, and that feeding system did not discriminate. So what will be talked about next week, and you have a preview here. We had some pizza, and we had some Chinese food, and we had some water, and we had a good time.
Don't forget the rice and banana.
I forgot the rice and banana.
And plus everything else that was in the GAN state. And some things he said we're not even aware of. And I don't know what that is, but there were many combinations, many different things were placed in the system, he said. And this is what we actually connected with.
So you try and explain this to your family or your neighbor or a perfect stranger, or when you go to sleep and you dream and your soul goes to have a meeting, who is it going to meet with? And is it only going to meet with other earth souls? Souls who are on earth, shall we say? Or is it going to meet with souls of the universal community? Who's choosing? How do you know to make that choice? So the ball game has changed. And so our understanding has to catch up. So we now have proof of concept, and we're all going through that. And we only have a few weeks to get acclimatized to this change, because what's coming in 4 weeks is going to be the realization, the real realization that after we were born, we've never been in outer space except in our dreams. Back to you, Mark.
Well, I'm very appreciative of Mr. Kesh's teaching on the soul, because it's always been taught as some sort of abstract, I think, more or less, in a way, at least in the organized areas, let's say. It was always something outside. It was non-tangible. We couldn't quite put our understanding on it, but now we're getting a much clearer understanding, and I'm very grateful to Mr. Kesh for opening this up. And this was deliberately kept away. I don't know if they have some of this knowledge, we'll say the Pope or the rabbis or the Ayatollahs, but they didn't want you to discover it, because this would really set you free and realize you don't need all these intermediaries. I mean, even to the point where the soul has to be saved. As Mr. Kesh said, there's no soul that needs to be saved. That would be like saying, the creator needs to be saved because you're made out of the essence of his soul. So there's been a real misleading, intentional misleading. So they don't have to close the shop right away. But this is coming, I think. And of course, we'll be meeting with the world leaders next month, and probably some of the religious leaders along the way in some of these meetings. I don't know what the meetings are going to be other than the next one. with this interaction with the world leaders.
So I asked a question, and I
Yes.
wonder maybe people might want to help me out with the answer here. I have my own opinion, but one of the things we know that when we go into dream state, we have to take care of the business and the physicality. So I think I'm pretty confident in saying that the souls are taking care of business. They don't really have to make any decisions, right? They don't have to, decide whether they're going to go bowling or whether they're going to go to the supermarket. They just have to hang around. So the question then becomes, what is the soul of the body doing in the dream state? Is it kind of hovering around, or is it accompanying the soul through the travels?
Alex, it's Dean here. May I come in?
You're more than welcome, Dean. How are you, buddy?
I'm okay, Alex. How are you?
I've done enough talking. Go ahead.
So, my experience today. So I was present today in this system, the feeding system, and so I took a position this time where before I actually led horizontal, and I found myself in the sessions I've been in that I sort of drifted off because I was in that sort of horizontal position. So the angle, I changed my angle this time. I sat up, and so the position of my head and the angle I was at was completely different to the last sessions. And in this session, I didn't have as big as an interaction. I seemed to go through a position where I had the same thing where my body went cold down certain areas of my body. This was when the first half an hour happened, when we were told to expand ourselves and let the energies build in our brain, in our head, in our soul, and then expand this out. And I went through the same sort of transmutation feeling that I had before after settling down, listening to lots of things going on. And then we went through the various stages, and I found that this time I was listening right to the end today, and I know many people gave testimonials saying that they experienced many beautiful things with tasting certain of the dishes, the pizzas and all the Chinese foods and all the other elaborate ganses, as Marcus said, that were present, and actually tasting the water. I didn't get any of those sort of sensations of real taste at all this time. But however, I did go through many positions where, first of all, I had when we first started, a very big tingling on the front of my tongue, right on the tip of my tongue, it lasted for quite some time. And then this position through the various stages changed, and it went to more of a further up the tongue, and it was a different sort of a tingling sensation. And then other parts of the process where I went through was I felt pressure in the top of my head in certain locations, and I could definitely feel an expansion of the soul or something within the brain structure that was interacting. This was very relevant for me today, and there was one point today where, even though I was sat up, I noticed that when I really let myself go, took away the physical interactions as much as possible, I started concentrating on soul aspects of the Universal Council and other aspects, that the soul immediately went into that other position. And I sort of, it's not blanking out, but I was very unaware of my physicality. Now, whether this was for a split second or for longer, I couldn't tell you. However, I know that in that moment, in that split second, I received what I needed to receive. And that was an instance that I had. So overall, my experience wasn't of all these wonderful interactions other people had, but I was very aware of things happening, and the noises and all that were going on, of the systems, the units going off, and others speaking and snoring and falling asleep and coughing and spluttering. They were all part of it again, but you come to a position to just let it happen. You don't when you go into the next position I spoke about, where you open up you really go into the soul aspect, none of that becomes apparent at all. That all just completely drifts away. And then you receive the energies, that spectrum of energies that you acquire. It seemed to me anyway. So that was my experience. There's more, but that's all I can remember in this exact moment. So I don't know if that helps, Alex. I know that doesn't really answer your question, but it just gives a general understanding of what I experienced today.
Dean,
yeah,
do you want to try and answer the question?
So yeah, my soul definitely went with me. The soul went, and I would say the body was. I would say it probably stayed here, and the soul just went off.
So is that what you think we do when we dream?
When we dream, yeah, I think the body is stationary. It's a vessel. It's it's a.
No, the body is, yes, we agree. Yeah. But I'm talking about the soul of the body in the dreamscape. Is the soul of the body accompanying the soul? Yeah,
sorry. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So yes, the body. I would say that the aura of the body, that the soul of the body would have gone off with the soul. Yes, I sense that anyway.
I think it perhaps is how heavy that physicality is for the soul to take, or how much baggage, let's say, it has. That could be one of the limiting factors of not taking the physicality with it.
Depends on the destination, Mark. Where are you going to? And that is something that the soul of physicality may be still dictating to the soul, on a tether, that where they go within the limitations of the environment that they travel to. So the soul may want to go further, but the body, again, it's a retrospective sort of question. You can look at it from different viewpoints. You could say that you could keep the body here and let the soul completely go, or you could go into the earth space, as Alex would say, and then the soul is still positioned with the soul, I would say.
But what will happen if, let's say now, you decide to go to Mars space? So while you're in your physicality here, because that's what we've been doing. We've been doing simulated the flight experience. So the physical transmutation was turned off, and so we were practicing the soul transmutation. So if we were going to Mars space, would the soul and the soul of the body go as a tandem to Mars space?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you hurt yourself?
It could be either way. It could be either way. It could be that the soul goes there.
Sometimes yes, sometimes
no. Exactly. It really it depends. If I was from Mars, would I have that physical body the same? It just happens to be that we're present here on the planet Earth, and this physical body,
we're not taking the physical body.
I'm on about this soul of the physical body.
Yeah, just the soul.
Just the soul. Body. Yeah. Yeah. So so for me, that body would on the Earth, within this environment, it seems quite obviously. We know it's dense. On Mars, I don't know, because I don't know Mars in my physical body here right now. I may have been there, but I don't remember. So, it's that situation. We're still creating the environment we want to go into with our thoughts and intentions. And this transmutation we're going through is this filtering, gradual learning process that we're all, re-establishing connections And whether we are traveling with the soul of physicality, um, I think, as I said, Alex, sometimes yes, and sometimes maybe not.
So, Dean, based on the intentions,
Mhm.
the one who makes that decision would be the soul.
I would say yes, yeah. Ultimately, the soul, of course, and then, but the soul of physicality still has a big, dependent upon the environment you're anchored to, has a big say in it. And so that's that magnetical gravitational field, and that's all the, all the emotions and everything that runs through the physical, the physicality soul. All those emotions and experiences you have are the anchor point. And so when you, through these systems we're experiencing now, and what I spoke about earlier, for me, my experience, that there's going to be an opening up of the plasma. My physical body in its physical state has certain conditions that need balancing. It's an emotional thing that's happened to me through my lifetime, and so there's certain aspects of me that have certain positions, feel strengths that are, I say, anchored, that are tied to this earthly realm. And we all have this. I'm speaking for myself, but I believe all of us have this sort of these situations. And so it's through these teachings that you're giving today, and through the experiences of going into this transmutation, that we're gradually learning to reconnect and loosen those, so that we can then be more of a free will, being able to travel from point A to point B. And from what was been spoken in many of the teachings, we already know that we can be in all positions at once, so we can take all the positions. However, it's establishing that first jump, whether it's with the soul of physicality or whether it's with just the soul. However, it's that first initial jump that we make, and then once we understand that, then I think all the other space gaps and everything else will open itself up gradually, and that will be the joining for me, or if I'm speaking for myself, with the universal flow.
So I agree with you totally. That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you. Now, if you're willing to do this, then these possibilities open up to you. And so that means there are those who would be unwilling. Wouldn't that be correct?
There's many that are unwilling, yes. Yeah,
And
many
so,
people are very physical and do not want to. I admit myself, Alex, that I find it difficult. I still want to have a physical existence, and
no,
so
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the intermediate travel of the
mhm,
soul and the soul of the body. So if let's say you're the president of a country,
mhm.
and if you, as a ruler, you would you would actually lose that power. So would you then forbid the soul of the body to travel with the soul?
In answer to the first bit of it, for a president, whoever, a leader, we already are part of them, and that's what we need to understand, that we're all part of each other, and we all have tiny parts of us within each of us. And the next bit is, the soul of physicality. So if you're a leader, then if you can understand that you can allow the physical, the soul and the soul of physicality to take another position, then you understand that you don't really have any power over any other soul. It's the physical body, and the manifestation of all this that's happening. But the soul of physicality and the soul has no position over any other soul. And I think the world leaders, many that listen to these, and we know many do, they understand this, but they're holding on, they're anchored. And
So
when they reach that understanding, they will let go.
so Dean, if they don't want to let go, then Can we say that they would, shall we say, prevent the soul of physicality to go,
Yeah,
to interact?
I would say yes, Alex. Yeah.
Okay. Now, different question. Assuming that they can do that, and I think we're all on the table saying yes, they can do that. So, can they prevent the soul from wanting to go?
Good question. Yeah, because it's confined within the physical body. So unless they have an intention, then the soul is confined within the blood structure of the physical body. So until that withers away, or that's there's an accident or something, then that is still very much connected. So until that position, yes, they can stop.
Okay, so I disagree with you on that. Does anyone else have any comment?
Well, isn't the soul, if Moses's soul is perfect, isn't the world leader's soul perfect as well? I mean, Mr. Kesh keeps talking about maturing the soul. And maybe this is the bringing back the remembrance of its capabilities, of the zero-time communication, of the transmutation, of growing limbs, of feeding itself. Maybe this is the maturing part, but it's already perfect. If Moses' soul is perfect, then the world leader's soul must be perfect as well. Again, it all boils down to the soul of physicality that's creating the misconduct, the lion, as we refer to it.
So Mark, we're going to find this out soon enough, because as Alex has said earlier, and you've said, we know, and Mr. Kesh has spoken about, the next stage will be to bring the world leaders in and to set the seed. So we're coming to a position where they are going to, we're all going to find this out and experience this. And so we're going to the soul of humanity is going to, as one soul, then maybe in answer to your question, Alex, in looking at it from another viewpoint, yes, the soul has the ability to travel wherever it wants. Needs to, I should say. It's that consciousness that is, if all the universes and the creator is within us, then yes, we have the ability to be in any position at any point, and it's just a matter of us understanding that free flow of energy, which we are going through the process of that filtering process of gradually understanding this. And then some of us have parts of it, and others of it have the other parts, but gradually the knowledge seekers and many people that are involved in this are that all the souls have started to come together as one, and then it will be a position of there'll be no position to have, because it's just we'll all be in total peace with ourselves and the environment. And then, as Mr. Kesh said, when you come into these fields, the world leaders wouldn't travel; they won't walk in. But when the envelope becomes the earth, then you're part of it. There's nowhere to go. So then the one soul of all of us becomes the traveler of space and time, in position again, which we already are anyway.
This is great. So you guys run next week's class, okay?
Alex, your teachings are very advanced, so we have to do it, the way that we understand it.
Well, you guys have hung in there with me, and we're still on the inner space thing, but we're going into the advanced series, so a lot of people don't even want to know that. So, but thanks for your answer. It's a beautiful answer, and you too, Mark. So much for all your excuses. That was a brilliant answer.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Mark. You will
Yeah, all of us.
add
It's
to the
all of us.
knowledge. All of us, yeah.
Thank
It's
we,
all. Thank
as
we.
Mr. Kesh
There's
said.
many knowledge seekers there today, Mark. I noticed that are that are in the background, and there's many that have come to the foreground. Many souls, and I see the interactions, and the more that you go into the systems, and you're involved in the technology, you see more of the interactions that many of humanity have not experienced it yet, wouldn't understand. It's a very gradual filtering process of, and I've noticed this a lot myself recently, is where you're starting to realize these souls are all one, and they can position themselves wherever they want in place, time, and position. And I see this with my interactions within being present in the environment of this systems that are being built, which is for everybody to experience. That's kind of a roundabout way of saying things.
Yeah, I didn't. The first thing I wanted was a French pastry, a peach French pastry with confectionery sugar on it. And the only taste I thought I interacted with was my tongue touching the confectionery sugar, this powdered sugar that's put on it. But I didn't really smell anything, taste anything, or see anything. Although when the meeting ended and Mr. Kesh was talking about a bowl of fruit that they put into the unit, all kinds of, I had a definite smell of almost like a bouquet, but it was fruits, and it only was just a flash, and then it disappeared. But it was after the meeting when people were giving their testimonies, and he said, we put a bowl of fruit, all kinds of fruit in there. And that's when I had that, just maybe less than 1 second. But it's almost like when you walk by a bouquet of flowers and you get that scent of it in a way. That was the only real physical sensation I had. My stomach was growling during the meeting. I thought I said that earlier, that I thought it was going to get picked up by the mic. That went away, and it did growl a little while later. I made a cup of coffee after, and it just did. Maybe about 45 minutes ago, the stomach growled a little bit. The noise it makes, sort of like it has that empty sound in it, but now it's just right back to where it was. So we're just, satisfied, or this emotion of satisfaction of some sort.
You mentioned, Mark, that it was the thought of the icing. So that as soon as you had that thought, you led yourself to the emotion of the memory that you had when you actually experienced this taste.
Yeah.
So we know this takes you immediately to that position. It's like music or food in particular. You have a particular food, whatever it is, it takes you back. It could be a birthday party, it could be an interaction with your family and friends or relatives, whatever. But there's sometimes there's a big emotional sort of link to a very specific moment with a certain taste. For many of us, and this could be sometimes this can be over a longer period of time, and it's a gradual overall bigger picture, and sometimes it can take you to an instant moment where you just remember that precise moment for whatever reason. The soul is the soul of physicality loves that or enjoyed that particular moment.
Yeah, I was just trying to hold on to the emotion of the pastry, the emotion of the pizza, the emotion of the Chinese food. This is, and again, we can re-tap into these. And of course, Mr. Kesh said on the 27th going forward for 5 days, were actually going to be allowed to join and to spend some time absorbing energies in the same way for 30 minutes. He said not longer than 30 minutes, and see how this works out. But I was just holding on to the emotion, which I was thinking, this is energy in motion. The soul is learning how to feed the physicality through the energies and not with the matter state. So this is part of it. So we'll see how we do. You'll still have to eat something. It'll wear off. And he said we need about a week to settle down, but then we're going to go back to it every day for 5 days.
Mark, I noticed that, so I went in, I didn't eat too much last night. And then for me, it was in the 12 o'clock CET time. So, and I didn't eat anything in the morning. I just had some tea. And so I went in sort of a feeling of hunger. But I did this deliberately because I didn't want to, I wanted to see. And then when I came out after an experience, I felt hungry. So I went and I did eat something.
Sure.
And I was very thirsty. When I did get the sensation of, when we talked about the waters and everything, I did have that feeling of a lot of saliva in my mouth and being thirsty. And I was extremely thirsty after the session. I needed to drink quite a lot of water afterwards. So I did have that sensation as well.
Oh, yeah. My mouth was salivating after about 30 or 40 minutes in the meeting. It's almost like, I mean, extra salivating. Mr. Kesh said that he put a cup of Gans water in the system. Like sometimes you'll go to sleep and you'll wake up and you'll see a spot on the pillow, and your mouth must have had a lot of or whatever saliva there, and it drips out. I don't know if anyone else has ever experienced that. I have. And but the mouth kept salivating for even after, when people were giving their testimonials. I mean, it was highly unusual for that much. It's almost like sometimes you'll give a dog a treat, or not with cats, but dogs, or you can see them start to drool, or when you think of your favorite food or something, you get that salivating in your mouth. Well, this went on for the whole time of the meeting. After the first 40 minutes or so, I don't know exactly when it started, but I said, gee, why is my mouth so wet? I don't understand. Where did all this come from? I did have a cup of tea earlier. I got up a couple hours early, made a cup of tea. That's all I had. Yesterday, I had a small cheeseburger and a large cheeseburger and some fig bars. That's about all I had yesterday. And but this salivating was definitely noticeable.
I think that we know this, as soon as anybody speaks about food, you instantly think about food, and it's that connection. So the moment you imagine on the soul of physicality and the physical, if someone speaks something and you directly connect to it straight away, and it makes you think. So you have the space gap, then you have the direct point of reference. So you're directed to it by the words. And then the mind connects to it and the thought, and it directs you directly to that specific moment and what it is in an instant. Exactly what the systems are doing. So they are, you can receive the energy of it in a fraction of a millisecond, because as soon as the intention and you receive that energy flow, that field strength, you're going to receive the energies, that 20%. You're going to receive that spectrum of energies that you've just thought of, and then by thinking it and speaking the words, or even just thinking it, then the body goes, yeah, I would love to have that energy, and so in a split second you're there, and you receive the emotional release of the energy, and I'd imagine this is maybe how the systems are working, and they're actually physically giving us. They're giving us the field strength of this, the GANs, the energy of it, through the energy transfers, which is the transmutation again. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, they had made all these Ganses, right? The lentils and everything else was not in the matter state; it was in the Gans state, and other things that were in the Gans state too that we're not aware of. He said other items, but everything that they put into the system was in the Gans state, and this is how they transferred the fields, as I understand it.
thinking about them, all food is in a lot of food, well, if not all, is in a GAN state as such. If it's a live animal or a plant or something, our vertical friends, then it's in a GAN state, and then we have it, we touch it and feel it and put it into our mouth. But the moment, as we know, we put it into our mouths, it becomes plasma. So it goes, so the actual matter state ingredient of food is actually, we're anchored to it and we enjoy it, but it's not in the actual matter state for very long.
Right. The matter state is a plasma condition, but a very weak plasma condition.
Yeah.
And then we turn it into a GANs. We open up its atomic structure, don't we?
We do, yeah. As soon as you put it into ourselves, yeah.
In the vacuum condition and everything else, it starts to get torn apart and open up.
So we're taking apart the reality of everything very quickly.
So this will be the transfer of the energy for your lighting as well. Send knowledge. I think this all can happen, and then we can then redirect that in our area. I think, as he said, you start putting these systems in different houses, and again, it's up to us to install these systems. Maybe the limitation is us, but there probably won't need to be that many systems to be put out there. But again, I don't know.
One question I would have, Mark,
yes,
I could give to yourself or to Alex, would be that it's spoken that Mr. Kes said once you turn, let's say we have the lights, the plasma light, once you turn it on, it's on. Once it's on, and it doesn't go off again. So how does that, how will that affect the physical body if this light is continuously on?
Right, I do sleep with lights on. So I'm quite used to it. But if it happened to my neighbor and he realized that it was coming from my place, he can't turn any of his lights off anymore. He might not be too happy, at least first. But I'll tell him, at least they're on all the time, but you don't have to pay the bill.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. That so once you initiate the plasma and it becomes on, it's literally turned on, then it's present, and so it begs the question of how we will interact with this in a matter state condition.
He said he never believed in all these transmission lines, all these copper wires going here and there. He said that was the worst part of his nuclear training, Mr. Kesh said. As a control engineer, they had to go through all this substation and wiring and transformers, and he said, I never believed in it. So now, yeah.
So will it be just white space everywhere? Will it just be, just light?
We may be able to control them again with our emotions, as he said. But if you tap into the energies of the universe, I know he said that with the gas unit in your heating, or he said you could let the heater run, or because it's not a limited resource. It's endless. So it doesn't matter if you're not wasting anything. And actually, you're probably doing some good. With this plasmatic gas, I guess you could just let it run. And then it'll seep out into your area in the neighborhood. I don't know. But he did say that gas was going to be used for this micro plasma reactor, which they want to put it into this tabletop unit. But he also said you could tap into it for cooking, or perhaps to run a propane car, or one of the cars that run on gas or something. That'll be miniaturized for the batteries as well. it's just phenomenal, just amazing what a lot of knowledge and a little bit of technology, how it can change the thing, the whole structure.
So is this transfer of energy, like Mr. Kiss said, that he Tesla started to do this, didn't he? Where he actually had, he was running a car in New York or something, and the transfer was somewhere else.
He said twice in the last workshop, we're bringing you what Tesla brought you. But it's
much more advanced.
Yes. Yeah. With the soul and the transmutation and the communication and the rest of it, the wellness. But yes, Dean, go ahead, please.
So if after what you've just said, Mark, if we are controlling it with our thoughts, then in answer to my own question, then is it on only when I require it? So when I in my thoughts, I redirect myself somewhere else, is that light still on, or is it in another position?
Well, go ahead. Did someone else want to come in? He said we'd learn how to generate the energies from within ourselves and then release it into the environment down the road. I'm sure it's not tomorrow, but this is what these systems are leading to, that will produce the energies within ourselves and release it into the environment we're in, so we can have a light anywhere eventually. Right now, it'll be limited to the tabletop in your particular location. But the energy is the crumb part of the matter, it seems to me.
So maybe, Mark, this would be a wonderful way to give it to the world leaders, would be to have it so that whatever it is that they need in the emotion to satisfy their hunger would be to give it to them in this light that they, with their thoughts, they control and they see in their spectrum that they need. And then the moment that others are present, then they receive what they need. So the world leaders are really, they just control themselves.
And wouldn't they be great assets for the foundation, for their nations, to explain how they really found the error in their ways or the flaw in their thinking, and they've come around to realize, and wow, all the people that voted for them over the years and this and that, and maybe they're not perfect, no one is, but they'd be a tremendous asset to the Keshe Foundation as they come on board. I mean, you talk about Xi Jinping, over 1.5 billion people, or Modi in India, another 1.8 billion people. Not all of them will listen at first, of course, but over time, I think they'll really see a change in the world leader and the policies of their country, perhaps, and they can start to see the love and care and say, this is not an act, something has happened to this person.
And can you imagine, Mark, when they enlighten enough to understand that they tap into the souls of those souls they're responsible for, and those souls will then feed them energy, and it will be a totally different, transparent way of communicating with your own nations, with the people you're responsible for. As you elevate, then instead of taking, you're going to be receiving. And if they have, or as we know, they have a soul, which is not the soul of physicality, but the soul which is eternal, then this energy transfer of the souls they're responsible and interacting with, then they will receive the energy of this for a very long time, instead of it being a taking situation. Maybe if they come to understand this, that they would very quickly change their ethos and their thoughts.
Right, and many of them have medical issues. There's many imbalances in the world leaders and their families as well. As Mr. Keshe said, when he meets with them, the first thing they ask is, do you have anything for my illness? So they would be quite interested in this technology. They are quite interested in it, but I think the physicality is sort of blocking them. So as we elevate or enlighten the soul, it will bring the soul of physicality along with it. You know, they'll probably be saying to the, you know, what about all this wealth that I've acquired, and I have billions and billions, and I have all this power, and it's very important to me. But that whole position can be turned around, I believe.
Yeah, they just need to speak with Mr. Kesh for half an hour. I'm sure they would change the position.
So,
thank you, Mark. Thank you for the conversation.
yes, thank you.
Let somebody else come in now.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for filling the gap, space gap.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I'm going to take this opportunity to thank everyone for allowing me to present today on this historic day here in February. So we'll look forward to your class next week, and I'll sign off today and with gratitude.
Okay. Does anyone else want to say a peep or two? And that's fine. Okay, I am going to play the Kesh coin and Marius's interpretation, or what he did for the first landing on the moon. But of course, this is the flight system, the physical flight system that we could look at it. You could also look at it as the soul if you remove the physicality, as many times Mr. Kesh does in his drawings, where he'll draw something and then he'll remove other parts and we get to see something else. And then I'll play the final disclaimer and the meeting will come to an end. The Kesh coin video is only, I'm going to play that about a minute, and the other one's just around a minute too. And then the final disclaimer. Let's give another opportunity if anyone wanted to voice anything, any thoughts, something you'd like to share, a comment, an experience.
Yes, Mark. Diane had a comment in the chat there.
Yes, I saw that. I saw that, and I did hear Mr. Kesh say we were waiting for about 13 or 14 other people to come in. I don't know if they came in. I didn't see the attendees
Diane
list
didn't.
rise. 14 more, but again, I don't know what the perhaps she'll have another opportunity. I would think so, because of the circumstances with the computer and the new phone and so on and so forth, and how important that ticket was, let's say.
Well, the thing is that she doesn't need the computer. It's all done on the cell phone. And the thing is that she still has her ticket. So I don't see why she wouldn't be able to use it. So
yeah, I didn't hear anything about non-refundable, like the airlines or something. If you don't use it by a certain date.
Oh no, these flights are non-refundable. This is true.
I understand that. Yeah.
But Diane, we're having sessions on the 27th for the whole week.
What? Oh, okay.
So they'll send me a notice about that, like on customer service, like they did for last night, which I got.
Yes. You can inquire, but I mean, let's put it this way: it's European time, 4 to 7,
yes,
Monday to Friday.
Correct.
And it's
the same number. You know, and that happened to me too, Diane. It was one of the meetings I went into, and I checked the phone the night before. Everything was fine. I go in there before the meeting, and all of a sudden it says I require an update. And then I did something wrong and it wouldn't update. And about 4 minutes before the session started, finally it went through. I think Ella helped me on that, but I was like, I can't believe this. I thought I might miss the session.
Yeah, well, I'm not used to a cell phone, so
no question.
So
the Kesh Foundation is very accommodating, as we all know. So
yeah.
Don't lose any sleep. Don't lose any sleep over it.
Well, I was upset, but I know there was
I
other
know.
things, so thank you guys for
No problem.
answering.
Diane, it's Dean here. Just so you know that I had exactly the same problem today, right up until the last moment, literally.
Unbelievable.
All sorts of things happened with my connections and the internet and all sorts of things. And so it wasn't until the exact last precise moment that I literally entered the room. And so this is the the position of being present with the foundation. And if it's meant to be, the door will open, even if it's
Yeah.
the last moment, it will open.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Plus, Alex said he probably would cover anyone who wasn't. Didn't you say that in the disclaimer, Alex? You'd cover anyone who missed the flight.
No, you were talking about one of the resident billionaires that we have.
Right. So very good. It can only get better. Best place to be in and around the Keshe Foundation. Even if you don't think you understand it, you understand more than you think you understand, I would say. We may not be able to manifest it in the physicality, but the soul is all aware of these things. And again, it's our soul who's brought us here. It's not the physicality. And that is a hard concept to tell someone, since most people haven't found the soul yet, but it's there and it's working all the time. And the souls are in communication with each other and they're working together in the background. We don't see it in the physical dimension, but they're working to bring about this change. The physicality is more or less an afterthought, as they say.
Mark, and can I just quickly say that's constant, as you just said, that's 24/7. That is, the souls are very, very aware and they do communicate constantly. And when you start to really tap into this, you will experience this yourselves. Anybody listening who has not been part of it, but it's just starting to come in, you will gradually find that you will tap in and understand that every interaction you have is direct correspondence with all the souls that are present, and then you start tying up all your understandings on every interaction you have in your daily life. You'll start to see that when you go to meet other people in other situations, they already will be speaking or do something that is directly related to something that you've thought of or that you would want to have, you have a desire for or you have a need for. And these interactions build and build and build until you suddenly realize that it's all the same thing, and whatever you need is provided. And as Mr. Keshe would say, ask and you shall be given. And once you tap into this universal knowledge, then it really is this. And if it's in a position where you need it, it's there for you. And so this is where you don't need billions. If everything is given to you at the point of need, then why do you need billions of dollars or whatever you want to call it? You don't need that. Mr. Keshe could be the richest man on earth. And he doesn't choose to be. He chooses to share and give because he knows the knock-on effect further on down the line in the reality of a soul aspect. The billions mean nothing. As Mr. Keshe was saying, the wealth is within.
The knowledge is not in the pocket. It's in the wealth is not in the pocket. It's in the knowledge of the universe, right? Isn't that one of his expressions? Now, Dean or Alex, doesn't the soul have a personality, would you think, or are they all margarita pizzas? Are they all just plain energy? Would you think the soul has some sort of personality to it? Anyone?
Yeah, we're all different flavors.
Yeah, definitely.
Spice of life.
Look
at all the plants. Look at all the animals. Look at all the people.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you, Alex and Mark. They're 100%. We all have this physical interaction in our environment that gives us our experiences and our emotions, and it gives us our characteristics and our individuality. And however, the soul and the soul of humanity, the soul of the planet, the soul, is let's say the soul of the universe. We're part of that structure. So then we become the one soul. We're one soul of the creator. So we're all elements of the soul. So we have an individual sparkle, a ray, but the cosmic ray of all of us is the same.
Good. Just showing a picture of the store here in case anyone comes and listens to this for the first time. You can go to the Kesh store and you can find many of the things, the compact plasma unit, the headphones that accompany it, gas units, and many other marvelous portraits of things. Here's the home enhancement power unit, which is a little bit different. But again, they're all, here's the product for the knee, which Mr. Kesh says he's made with his own hands. No one else could make that. That's probably a very, very valuable thing to have, not possess, but if you don't need it, you could share it with the others. But again, this is something he's made with his own hand. I don't think anyone understands it. I see Joseph has come back in. He did have his mic open. Joseph, is there something you wanted to share? Or you just came back to say goodbye? No. Let's see, did you come back in? Yes.
You couldn't hear me right now. Yes, I wanted to share something, but I have lost the topic I wanted to share.
No problem.
Because I could not open my mic, then my mic opened later, then I could not go out of the meeting. I had to restart my system, my very old system, I have to say, but now I'm back in, but I have to, maybe it comes later again.
Yeah,
thank you.
No problem. It happens to me too. Sometimes I'm thinking about something and I'm listening to someone else, and then I said, gee, I just lost that thought somewhere. I guess it landed in the space gap or something. So no problem. But anyway, the Kesh Foundation store is where you can see the latest technology offered to the citizens of this planet. And again, the universal community is quite aware of what's going on this planet. Actually, they're quite envious, or a little bit envious in a way, of man being able to move in the dimension of energy. And many beings in the universe do this already. But the ones in the UFOs, and apparently there's many of them, have been still trying to figure this out over millions or billions of years. And it's really a gift from the Creator as I see it. But we're just, again, realizing our own capabilities, our own beauty and grace, which Mr. Kesh continually emphasizes. So that's the store. We'll play Marius's, we'll play the Kesh coin first, and then we'll go to Marius. I'll play the final disclaimer. The meeting will end. Thank all the souls for being here today. We're all, Jefferson, did you want to say something? I saw your mic come open.
Hi, Mark.
Yes.
Oh, hello. Hello, everyone. Hello, Alex. Thank you for the teaching again. Must see it again. I'd like to just say a few words about today. It's the third time, that we have made these specific meetings. And the very powerful thing is the connection between all of the knowledge seekers or not, or participating. It's amazing that we can feel the presence and the energies from everyone. And interesting this time, a little bit different from the others, that we gave specific food from our countries, and we taste in the mind or in our conscience maybe different taste. In fact, the only taste that I felt was those tastes of things that I know, like banana, rice, beans, I could taste of them, and the pizza, because they are known tastes. But I felt energy of a different taste as well. And I think it was very interesting, because if you are dealing with the field energies from the system and from each one of us sharing at the same time, just like a big table where we all work together in trying to understand and to or how to use this to help ourselves and others in the many situations. And it's very interesting because in a point of time, my mouth, as many people, you said as well, Mark, it started to salivate so much. So much. I said, oh, it's interesting because it's a point of emotion. It's not exactly something, but it's a point of emotion. If I will make a test one day that I feel very thirsty or hungry, and just to go to that point, to that feeling, that I believe the mouth is going to salivate, so you can use that to feed yourself or ourselves. Because I was just taking a look in the saliva composition and the internet. It's 99% water, but the 1% remaining, it's a lot of minerals, a lot of ionization of different elements that we really need. So I think it's the energy from that was emitted from the units.
No question.
They came, yeah, I think they came in decelerate in such a way in the field strength that we were, that we could feel it touched our glands, salivary glands. In this way, it can touch any glands, I believe, in our body. So we can understand that we can do it by our own, how to increase the work of those glands inside our body and others' body to help. Yeah, I think it was very, very, very nice experience, but the results we're gonna understand in the next 2 weeks if you follow the.
So you said water, the saliva is 99% pure H2O.
Yes, that's in the. Let me see here again in the Wikipedia saliva. Yes, 99% of water plus electrolytes, mucus, white blood cells, epithelial cells, from which DNA can be extracted, enzymes such as lipase, amylase, antimicrobial agents such as secretory IgA and lysozymes, between others. So I think it's interesting because the saliva, if we have it available, you can create it through the point of emotion. You can have this as a surplus in this 20% that we need just to start the game.
So if we could do this, can you imagine that you could never have to take another glass of tap water again with all the things that are in the tap water? We could do this and you'd never have to drink another glass of water from the tap again?
Yes, I think we can learn how to do this, practicing. I believe so. The next time that I'm thirsty, I will just try to remember or try to be in the point of emotion that I was with those images or the fields that I was feeling at that point, because of the quantity of saliva was
exactly amazing. It was more than I ever experienced and more for a longer time.
Yes, the same to me. I never had such a salivation. Sometimes if you think something that just like you close your eyes and you imagine cutting a lemon in the middle, normally we'll feel just a small quantity of saliva, but today was, oh, at that point it started, it didn't stop. After finished the meeting, I was still salivating. I said, oh, that's
Yep.
beautiful.
Many people reported the same. Yes.
Yes, you could feel maybe through this salivation, you could feel the energy of everything that everyone took to serve to each other and to interconnect. That I think it's so beautiful experience because we go just like in this teaching that we are connected, but there we were in the like a mission. And in the one thing that I'd like to ask, I don't know if you all were present at the time. In the beginning, 20 minutes before starting the program, we had a teaching from Mr. Cash talking about nitrogen, vertical people, very slow, and the salt, the connection with the nitrogen. Do you remember this, Mark?
No, I must have joined after. You mean today?
Yes, today, but
No, I
around,
joined after that happened.
yes, 20, 25 minutes before starting. We started I just joined the meeting at 11:31. And after 5 minutes, everyone was trying to test. Then came a teaching from Mr. Cash with his voice, talking about some vertical people and the nitrogen connection with the salt. I think it's the food for the vertical people, so they could join there. I don't know. I thought, oh, this teaching is amazing. It should be very, very interesting. But
Right.
one time,
Yeah. And just because you didn't taste anything or you didn't salivate, Mr. Kesh is working in the background, I think, testing certain things. Everyone seemed to have a unique experience. So just because I didn't actually taste the pizza, that doesn't mean I fell short of anything, because he may be doing something in the background that allows certain people to experience certain things at a certain point and see what their response to it is, and other people not to see what their response to it is. Or do they just copy what the others say?
yes, Mark, I believe that everyone have an individual feeling in the emotions and the positioning. But during the next weeks, I think we should try, as he asked us, try and write down, see if you can change it. Maybe the time that we normally eat, and the body's kind of accustomed in that time to eat, so we can change the time to see if it, there is a kind of testing coming on. Huh? That probably next 2 weeks we're gonna have it better, and the energy will be available for us to go and to interact with this energy in the next 2 weeks to come, I think. And so that's what I'd like to share and say thank you all for amazing.
Thank you
to be
for,
together in this journey, huh?
Yes, thank you for bringing the change. And of course, he only put one glass of water, as I understand it, in the system. Now there were 130 people in there. I don't know how many reported extreme salivating. He said, we know you'll need water. And so that's why we put the glass of water. But now we can start to comprehend how one system, one glass of water, can actually satisfy the entire city, the entire state, the entire nation, the entire planet, and the entire universe, if water is what they would like to have. One glass of water with 130 odd people in a meeting. The water didn't go down. It was just transferred the fields of it.